Let's say you had someone bend forward, kind of slowly, just rolling down, head, neck, shoulders, mid back, then low back, like that, all the way down into the pelvis and hips to the point where they kind of roll forward. And let's also say, as they roll down, as they're coming into that position, going forward like that, it deviates as one point as it's transferring down the spine, as the weight and pressure is transferring down that spine. It's just going to deviate to one side as it goes all of a sudden. Suddenly it shifts, like it bends to the left. Now, ultimately, they end up at the bottom, at the full range of motion, appearing to have a full range of motion, appearing to. But what was that wiggle back here? What was the purpose of that? So you have to understand, even though they made it all the way down safely, they didn't fall over, that little extra movement, that little divot for the golfers in the room, whether it's a bend to the side or even, you can look at it as a rotation as well, that happens too. Whether it's any of those, it represents an imbalance in the structures, in the anatomy, and all of these funny looking bones back here, all the way down, really represents some kind of an imbalance. And that means every time that person bends forward, which can be many times in a day and many times throughout their life, they're using one side more than the other, especially where that bend occurs. Consider for a second that if the vertebrae were just simply represented by these blocks here, these square blocks, and they don't really look like this, but let's say they do. The one that is relatively straight, even when it's transitioning through motion, balances the load. It's spread out to both sides. But as soon as we get that little bit of a bend to the side, suddenly the pressure is more on one side and it's off the other. So let me just ask, real simple, what would happen if I was to ride a bike only ever on one wheel, just popping a wheelie all the time? I mean, obviously I'd be really cool, but also we would expect that tire used more heavily to wear down faster. And there would actually be a point where it breaks irreparably, arguably at double the speed it normally would, maybe even faster. Now, thankfully, the body is capable of self repair. All of this intricacy here can be repaired on the fly as it's being used. But this repair actually works best when we're going through periods of rest where the parts are not being used as heavily, but also when it's balanced, when it's weight bearing evenly, which is really what it's designed for, and therefore it's more tolerant of. So when this person bends forward, slow as it may be or faster, when this person bends forward at that one point that they bend to the left, there is a split second, even though it's small, it's a split second where it's taking on essentially all the weight above it, everything above it, through the shoulders, up into the head and neck, all of that weight is now being placed, angled down upon that point. That pressure is now being exerted there, and there's comparatively little weight on the other side. So, as the body is used more and more like this, we can expect this side here to wear down just a bit more. We can expect a little bit of load and compression, nothing major, nothing serious, a little bit of load and compression, more on this side of the joints than the opposite side of the joints, because they're being comparatively spread out, less loaded. And there are a lot of small joints in the spine like this. However, this is no different than, say, if we picked the hips. If we were loading out one hip more than the other, more pressure was being exerted over here than it was over here. one side of the hip would wear down a little bit faster. That's reasonable over a long enough period of time. Same with the shoulders. If you only ever used one arm for everything, you might expect some problems with that arm, especially under heavy loads. Because the human body repairs constantly, any minor injuries created by this imbalance can be managed with really only small amounts of discomfort. Not much at all, in fact. For years and potentially decades, for at least the small injuries. However, there's going to be a point where loading the spine in this way, loading the body in this way, where we are wrecking things, we're injuring things faster than the body can heal them. And at this point, we might suddenly, kapow, unexpectedly, start having back pain. But the truth is, this has probably been building for some time, and now we just can't keep up. And so this is why exercise therapies and manual therapies, whether that's physical therapy, chiropractor, osteopathy, massage therapy, any of those, this is why they can be beneficial to you. You can get balanced enough that the healing capacities of your body can catch up to what you've done to it. And it's very possible. You can possibly permanently recover from old injuries that happened long ago that are still nagging at you. And maybe, given the opportunity, you might even prevent injuries that you don't know you have. You may stop those from occurring at all. It's just a thought. Hey, what are you looking at there, buddy? Oh yeah, I see what you're looking at.